This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, 212th Trooper, Silas 1610, Carmen CJ, and RuneScribble, and brought to you by Normandy 1998 who requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon or become a channel member, and select the Pickle Producer tier, since among other benefits, you'll get to make a video request every month, be it the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Now, before we get into today's story, I just want to ask you to do me a favor, hit that like button since it tells YouTube you enjoy what I do, and check whether you're subscribed, since only about a quarter of my viewers are, and it's a free way to keep up to date with all my content. In return, I'll do all I can to keep making regular quality content for you. Thanks, and let's hop in. Meanwhile, back on the surface, the battle has grown even more intense. As while the Dinobots clash with Shockwave, Magnus prepares to duel Dreadwing and Ratchet works with Bulkhead to keep the Iacons and Insecticons from overrunning the Hall of Records. As this happens, RC, Bumblebee, and the humans have a battle of their own to contend with, the remaining aerial Iacons led by Soundwave. To the two-wheeler's credit, she has managed to keep up with the enemy armada, blocking their paths so they can't dive bomb her allies while lining up shots for B and the kids to blow the Iacons out of the sky. However, one foe she can never quite pin down is Soundwave himself, as his silent cunning allows him to leverage situations, with RC more than once having to change headings at the drop of a hat to ensure he does not land a fatal sneak attack on one of her friends, or else reach an unguarded entrance to the Hall of Records. Though in doing so, this exposes a new weakness, the dropship itself, with Soundwave taking particular note of the humans on board. As Megatron's eyes and ears, he has long known that they are among the Autobots' greatest vulnerabilities, so if he can target them, the Blue Bike and Yellow Scout's resistance will crumble. Concluding that Laserbeak should be more than sufficient for such a task, the silent comms officer deploys him, with the robotic raptor soaring into the dropship's cabin. As anticipated, Bumblebee leaps into action to protect the children, though this leaves him vulnerable to a flying kick from Soundwave, who transforms back into bot mode just long enough to knock the Scout out of the cabin before becoming a plane once more and soaring away. Fortunately, B's quick reflexes allow him to wrap a server around the edge of the dropship, sparing him a long fall and a painful death. Though with Soundwave coming in for another pass, the situation looks dire. Not just that, but back in the cabin, Laserbeak continues to menace the children, causing RC to yell that she's gonna land so she can help them fight off the Minicon. Knowing this would give Soundwave a clear path to hurt the others or reach Optimus, Jack yells that they're fine, a sentiment RC reluctantly accepts, having learned by now to trust her human partner's judgment and capability. Likewise, the kids have picked up their fair share of tricks from hanging around the Autobots, with Miko in particular having learned from Bulkhead that sometimes smashing something is the quickest way to fix a problem. To this end, she yells for the guys to help her pick up a Cybertronian-sized wrench, then as one they swing it, with their combined force being enough to crack Laserbeak's head case and put him offline. Meanwhile, Soundwave draws ever nearer, zeroing in on his next target, B's arm, since if he can slice it off with his wing, the Autobot will go plummeting to his doom. However, before he can bring this plan to fruition, a sudden impact throws his targeting into disarray as the children toss Laserbeak's body into the nose of his planeform with enough force to put him slightly off course, while Raph cries for B to strike now. Understanding his own partner just as well as RC knows hers, the Scout does not hesitate, warbling in the affirmative and hoisting himself up as he fires several shots into Soundwave while he's disorientated, taking off part of his wing and sending him spiraling into the dropship's cabin. Shifting back into bot mode as he prepares to fight, the silent spy master summons his tentacles so he can attack from all sides and finish off the children and Bumblebee at once. Though, as it turns out, there is only one side he should be concerned with. Dead ahead. As having turned back in her seat to glare at him, RC snarls that no one lays a servo on her partner. An instant later, her blaster flashes, tearing through the now exposed piece of his chest where Laserbeak would normally be housed, and directly into his spark. Though, even in death, he does not make a sound, hitting the dropship floor with an eerie silence. Though, in contrast, this causes an eruption of sound to emerge from the allied Autobots and Dinobots, as they let out a triumphant cheer, bolstered by the knowledge that Megatron's lieutenants can in fact be killed, since if one can fall, then they all can, and perhaps they can win the day, or at least hold their enemies at bay long enough for Optimus and Grimlock to return. And speaking of the pair, they have at last reached the first chamber, a dimly lit cavern whose only feature is a pair of bridges spanning a vast chasm too deep to see the bottom of, and too large to jump. Figuring this must be their next test, the two bots each approach one of the bridges, only to find that they are not a single solid platform, but instead a collection of hundreds, maybe even thousands of interlocking hexagonal tiles, each with a different glyph carved into them. Tentatively, Optimus places a foot on the nearest of these, with it coming as a pleasant surprise that it does not collapse, instead thrumming with faint energy, while on Grimlock's bridge, a matching glyph seemingly responds in kind. Seeing this, Optimus urges his companion to step onto that tile, and snorting dismissively, Grimlock does so, though unlike Optimus, he does not stay there, instead taking another step, only to be met by shock as the new tile gives way beneath his foot, plummeting into the bottomless pit below. Though, more surprisingly, the corresponding hex on Optimus's bridge also falls away despite the truckbot having made no further moves. Seeing the logic that is seemingly at play here, Optimus firmly instructs the Dinobot captain to stay where he is, since unless Grimlock steps onto the same tile as him, both their bridges will collapse, stranding them on this side, or worse, in the center of the chasm with no way forward or back. Testily, Grimlock suggests that Prime should just follow him then, since he's not waiting around for the red and blue bot to spend 1,000,000 stellar cycles agonizing over every step. However, here Optimus stops him, retorting that this isn't how the trial works, since when he stepped on a tile, Grimlock's bridge reacted positively, but when the Dinobots stepped onto a new one, they both lost a piece. This suggests there is an order at play here, and that like it or not, he must take the lead in this trial. Evidently, the boss Rex does not like it one bit, as he huffs that fine, if that's the way it's gotta be, Prime should just make a beeline for the other side and he'll do the same. Though, once more Optimus refutes this, pointing out how the tile they lost was in a different place on both of their bridges, therefore they aren't a perfect mirror of each other. Instead, he'll have to move forward, then find the corresponding tile on Grimlock's side so he can follow. Unfortunately, follow is precisely the wrong word, as letting out a frustrated growl, Grimlock takes off at a sprint, figuring he can outrun the tiles before they fall, though this is plainly a misapprehension, as despite his powerful legs, Grimlock is not faster than gravity. Recognizing that his partner will be killed if he doesn't do something, Optimus scans around, and upon spotting a glyph a few tiles ahead of Grimlock that matches one near him, the Autobot leader leaps onto it, before telling the other bot to move diagonally to the left, then stop. Knowing by now that he's made a mistake, even if he will not admit it to Prime, Grimlock reluctantly obeys, and is pleased to see that this tile is stable, even if it does chafe him to realize the commander he holds in contempt just saved his life. Not only that, but as he glances over at the other side, he sees that Prime's route has now become more circuitous, as his rash rushing has cost the truckbot a dozen or so tiles. To Optimus's credit, he does not berate Grimlock for this, instead simply cross-referencing their surroundings and taking a step onto another tile. Then, when he is sure it is secure, he instructs Grimlock on where to step, with his calculations proving correct. Thanks to his time sorting data pads as Orion packs, the last of the Primes has no trouble finding and matching these patterns, allowing the pair to get back on track, though it is slow going, with Grimlock often being forced to move sideways or even backwards, neither of which he particularly likes considering his direct nature. Nonetheless, he does as he is told, with the big bot even having to begrudgingly accept that Prime is good at this, as anyone else would take twice as long, or else make a mistake and send them both tumbling into the abyss. To this end, he holds in his frustration at having to be dependent on Prime's directions, and even stops questioning him after the third correct tile, so that by the time they both reach the other side and are able to reconvene on a solid landing in front of the next door, Grimlock acknowledges the other bot's nerd nature came in handy, at least a little. Recognizing what it took to say this, Optimus graciously thanks the Dinobot captain for his cooperation. Then, as the door opens before them, they stride forth once again. Up above, another duo likewise strides forward, though rather than side by side, they are approaching one another, Ultra Magnus on one side, and Dreadwing on the other. All around them, Decepticons, Iacons, and Insecticons clamor to see this pair fight, though it seems a few of them want to take a crack at the Autobots second in command themselves, as they try to force their way into the circle with claws and weapons raised. Seeing this, Dreadwing decrees that he will kill any bot who attempts to interfere with his duel. Then, when he is sure he has quelled his follower's energon lust, he locks optics with Magnus and questions if he is ready to meet his end. Unflinching as ever, the Autobot lieutenant retorts that it is the Seeker who will fall here, though rather than venom, there is resolute respect for a worthy enemy in his voice. Even so, this does not cause him to hold back, quite the opposite, as when he rushes in, he transforms both his servos into their hammer configuration to strike at Dreadwing's torso. Proving himself equally willing, the Decepticon 2IC responds by lowering the Forge of Solus Prime into a defensive position, catching and parrying the double hit before swinging the great hammer in a wide arc that collides with Magnus's shoulder. In the wake of such a blow, the blue bot's piston-shaped pauldron crumples and bends. Though refusing to back down, Magnus uses this to his advantage, shoulder barging the other bot so that his damaged shoulder piece acts like a battering ram. In a tone of mild disgust, Dreadwing chides that he fights like those wreckers he used to command. Though flashing his own optics over to Bulkhead, who is engaging a dozen or so foes at once, the truckbot retorts that he can only hope he is half as brave. With this, the fight resumes, as the Decepticon First Lieutenant takes the offensive, aiming for his foe's head now that the broken pauldron has cleared a path to victory. However, this is Ultra Magnus he is facing, methodical and stalwart, allowing him to match each blow, even if it takes both his hammers to block the ancient Prime weapon. Though, herein lies its strength and its weakness, as while the artifact itself contains immense power, Dreadwing is no Prime, merely a pretender for whom the weapon will not fully respond. Instead, it hangs heavy in his hands, with each blow taking a toll even on a seasoned warrior such as him. Meanwhile, Magnus holds the line, defending until an opening appears, and then striking decisively, his twin hammers planting dent after dent in Dreadwing's cobalt armor. And so slowly, the tide turns, with Magnus gradually gaining more and more ground, as his stoic resolve allows him to outlast Dreadwing's fervent zeal. Meanwhile, the Decepticon is forced further and further onto the defensive, until a well-placed blow from Magnus's left hammer takes his knee out from under him. Knowing in his spark that this fight is over, the Autobot Lieutenant offers Dreadwing the same chance to yield that the Jetbot gave him, promising fair terms if he surrenders. However, to one such as Dreadwing, surrender is tantamount to death, and so forcing himself back to his feet, he roars that he will fight to the bitter end, for Megatron, for Cybertron. Drawing on the last reserves of his strength, Dreadwing charges, though with a damaged leg, he is slow and lumbering, easily allowing Magnus to duck under his final brutal swing of the forge and step in for a counterattack. Were Optimus here, he likely would have gone for the leg again, so that he could once more push for surrender, but Ultra Magnus is not Optimus Prime, nor can he afford to be. And so bringing his hammer up, he strikes Dreadwing under the chin, taking his head in a single grim but necessary motion. Though, knowing his duty is not yet done, the Autobot's second in command does not rest here, bending down to claim the Forge of Solus Prime, all the while profoundly aware that this was not some moral victory or the divine will of Primus, but merely the inevitable result of two warriors clashing on the field of battle. And as he stares down at the prone form of the bot he slew, he reflects on how he was both a fearsome enemy and a patriot to the end. Compared to the dimly lit bridge chamber, this second room stands in stark relief, as all along the walls lanterns cast a calming blue glow. Taking a look around, Optimus and Grimlock see that they're in what appears to be a temple, with tall pillars on either side creating a clear path towards an ornate cube that is even larger than a Cybertronian, and covered in ancient-looking glyphs and markings that denote immense historical significance. Though in truth, the cube is secondary to what lies behind it, as overlooking it and the entire chamber is a high dais, where none other than Nexus Prime surveys them from atop a throne. In a warm yet regal tone, Nexus states that they have passed the trials and may now claim the Enigma of Combination. At once, Optimus's shoulders relax as he humbly thanks the Elder Prime, though in contrast Grimlock scowls, since while the figure's words seem like they're addressing both of them, the Dinobot captain cannot help but notice his optics only ever fall on Prime. This feeling is only further validated when Nexus gives his next instruction, that Optimus must kneel before the cube, as upon sensing a spark that exhibits both nobility and humility, it will open and reveal the enigma to him. Relieved that this is the final step and that the journey is almost over, Optimus strides forward and prepares to kneel on the spot Nexus indicated, though before he can, he feels a hand wrap around his servo, as Grimlock attempts to pull him back, growling that something about this Nexus guy doesn't feel right. Not having time for the Dinobot's aversion to authority and following instructions, Optimus calmly but firmly rebuffs him, stating that this is how primes are, and that this ritual is the same sort of protocol that was required for him to receive the Matrix of Leadership, so they're wasting time arguing when their allies are waiting for them back on the surface. Bristling slightly, Grimlock retorts that he knows all about stuffy Prime protocol, but this whole thing doesn't add up. Prime said Trion built this place after Nexus gave him the Enigma and left, so how's he here now? In spite of himself, Optimus has to admit that this is a good point, though before he can ponder it, Nexus speaks up once more, his tone colder and slightly disappointed, as he asks who Optimus is going to believe, this ruffian or his own optics and a fellow Prime. Cutting in now, Grimlock snorts that Nexus is right, trusting their optics is good. Then, before either bot can stop him, he tears one of the lanterns from the wall and tosses it onto the place Optimus had been meant to kneel. At once, the tile below the lantern glows bright red, so that a second later it is vaporized, and as Optimus stares in stunned disbelief, Grimlock looks up at Nexus with a deadpan expression as he challenges him to explain that. However, this is not quite the gotcha that the Dinobot had hoped, as Nexus haughtily replies the answer should be obvious. He built in a failsafe so only a worthy Prime can open the box. Anything else, including a brute like Grimlock, will be destroyed. That way no one unworthy will ever get their servos in the Enigma of Combination. At the center of this conflict, Optimus remains silent, unsure who to believe, as while he wants to trust in the wisdom of the Primes, Grimlock has made some points that, while rather blunt, are compelling. Seeing this wavering, both sides attempt to make their case, as Grimlock points out that the last two trials required them to work together, so why would this one only require Prime? Well, in a tone of authority, Nexus instructs Optimus to remember his duty. He is the bearer of the matrix of leadership and the wielder of the Starsaber, so he is honor-bound to model order and proper procedure. Now prove he is worthy and kneel. Snorting slightly, Grimlock retorts that Prime could use that fancy sword to smash open the box instead, an idea that causes Nexus' face to twist in disgust. And spotting this, the Dinobot doubles down, sneering that this guy is a liar, so they ought to be doing the opposite of what he says, and that means smashing that box into a million pieces. By now, Nexus' tone has descended into cold fury, as he asks if Optimus would dishonor the legacy of the Primes and his mentor Alpha Trion on the word of some ruffian. Has he forgotten who he is? He is Optimus Prime. Wryly, Grimlock grunts that the liar's right, since it seems like he has forgotten who he is beneath the titles and all that slag about duty and protocol. So tell him, is he just the last of the Primes here to lord over everyone and repeat their mistakes until he frags up Cybertron like they did? Or is he Optimus, the bleeding spark idiot? Hearing Grimlock call him by his name for the first time comes as a shock to Optimus' system, though with this shock also comes clarity, as without the pressure of both sides bearing down on him, he sees what he must do. And what he must do is strike. As drawing the Starsaber with both servos, he lunges forward and thrusts, ramming the tip of the blade into the cube, and to his shock, it yields instantly, shattering like glass, like this is what it was always meant to do. As the last shard falls, Optimus and Grimlock peer inside, only to see that the box is empty, with the only feature of note being the back wall, which has the entrance to another tunnel, no doubt leading to the next room. Though, before they can go through it, the voice of Nexus speaks up again, all animosity gone from his tone, as he warmly praises them, addressing Grimlock at last, as he congratulates him for having the intuition to see through his deception, while expressing pride in Optimus for having the fortitude to do what had to be done when the time came. By doing this and trusting one another, their bodies, minds, and sparks are now one, and they are ready for the Enigma which waits for them in the next room. Then, as Optimus and Grimlock take their first steps into the final passage, Nexus and his throne fade away, revealing themselves to be holograms who have completed their function. Meanwhile, the Dinobots are in the midst of completing their self-designated function, scrapping Shockwave. All around them the ground rumbles with every blow they exchange, as they rapidly shift between bot and beast mode to land any hit they can on the Cyclopean scientist, or to escape his retaliation, as they are all too familiar with the damage he can deal to their bodies. As for Shockwave, he stands in the center of the storm, a towering one-eyed monolith of logic and cold precision, cycling through calculations on how to inflict maximum pain and injury faster than any of them can speak. And were it not for the damage Grimlock dealt to his arm cannon before he left, the mad scientist may have already taken one of them offline. Nonetheless, even damaged, he is still deadly, as when Snarl charges in to slash him with his spiked tail, Shockwave merely shifts his servo into a nasty-looking medical tool that he plunges into the Dinobot's optic, tearing it out and causing him to shriek in pain as he falls back. Furiously, his remaining comrades roar his name in their own form of gruff concern, though putting his medic train to use, Snarl tells them he'll be fine, just focus on killing the con. This is easier said than done, as now with just 2 Dinobots, Megatron's first lieutenant of science is able to start pushing back, employing ruthless logic to keep them on the back foot, as he capitalizes on Slug's fear of disassembly tools to make him sloppy and erratic, nullifying his coordination and strategic abilities as the Dinobot's tactician, while a volley of shots from his cannon arm keeps Swoop at a distance where he can do little to help, and all the while he continues scanning for any opening he can exploit to subdue them. Since while this may be a battle of pride and closure for the Dinobots, to him it is simply the reacquisition or disposal of several misplaced specimens. However, here is where Shockwave's own weakness lies, as in his pursuit of all-encompassing logic, he has forgotten the power emotions can bring, such as hate, determination, and above all, brotherhood. As refusing to let themselves or their comrades down, the two remaining Dinobots push themselves past their individual shortcomings in a manner Shockwave's calculations could never have predicted. As Swoop makes the daring choice to close in, even if he must dodge Shockwave's shots at close range, while Slug swallows his fear and uses this moment of distraction while the Cyclops is targeting Swoop to assume his Triceratops form, before ramming into their nemesis and sending him crashing through a nearby building. As he does, Shockwave's damaged arm sparks and smokes, as some of the armor plating around the servo buckles, a fact that is not lost on Slug, who charges once again, specifically targeting the appendage this time, and catching it quite literally head-on, the ensuing damage almost tearing it cleanly off. However, here the Decepticon mad scientist gets lucky, as the arm remains attached by a couple of wires and circuits, meaning it is operational, and he can still use it to terminate the Triceratops. Or at least, that is what he thinks until Swoop's shadow falls over him. As stepping in to cover his pal, the Terrorbird wraps his talons around the arm and yanks, pulling it free of its socket and into the air. Though, it seems he is not done yet, as calling out Snarl's name, Swoop drops the cannon into his waiting servos, and not needing to be told what to do, the Dinobot medic levels the stolen cannon right at Shockwave, and fires point blank. In an instant, the Energon beam rips through the monster's lone optic before exploding at the back of his processor. While smirking triumphantly, Snarl questions how Shockwave likes this math. The Cyclops took one of his optics, so he took one in return. Too bad Shockwave only had the one to begin with. Predictably, this is met with silence, aside from the sound of Shockwave's seemingly lifeless body hitting the ground. Though for the trio of Dinobots, this is enough, as it sounds like closure. Unlike the false chamber the Nexus AI had inhabited, the true resting place of the Enigma of Combination is surprisingly plain. An empty room whose only feature is a cybermatter tablet on the wall, recounting the uses of the artifact throughout history. Nonetheless, Optimus and even Grimlock cannot help but feel the gravity of this place, as their optics fall upon a recess carved into the tablet, where an object vaguely resembling the Matrix of Leadership has been placed. Like the Matrix, it is a glowing circular core, though this is red instead of blue, while on either side it has a pair of triangular prongs that seemingly function like handles. This must be the Enigma. Figuring they must collect it together just as they have done everything else in this place, the two leaders do not even need to speak, instead instinctively taking up positions on either side of the Enigma. Then, as one, they each wrap their servos around two of the prongs and pull. Despite the countless stellar cycles it has spent embedded in the tablet, the artifact puts up no resistance, coming loose easily, so that an instant later the pair are holding it aloft. Though, whether they can be called a pair any longer is a matter for debate, as suddenly the red core of the Enigma flares up, pulsing with a rhythm that echoes inside their sparks. Before either can react, Optimus and Grimlock are drawn together, their frames shifting as a strange sensation of being unmade ripples through them. Yet, in that moment, there is no fear, only a rising sense of clarity, of transcendence, of two sparks aligning into a singular, brighter whole. A second later, light engulfs them entirely, and from within that radiance, someone new begins to emerge. Back on the surface, Megatron prepares to terrorize the Autobots, as with Soundwave, Dreadwing, and Shockwave now lost to him, the time has come to enter the fray himself. As his first order of business, his burning red optics lock on the dropship, while raising his T-Rex arm cannon, he opens fire, tearing through the craft in a single shot. To his mild annoyance, both Autobots are quick-acting enough to escape, having assumed their vehicle forms so their humans can flee with them. Though it is no matter, as now that they're on his level, he can hunt them down and enact slow, painful ends for each of them. Reading this in his cruel expression, Bulkhead breaks away from his fight to charge the Con Commander, as he refuses to let him hurt Miko and his friends, though this is not the even match it may once have been. As swatting the Wrecker's opening hit away with his free arm, Megatron lashes out with his other hand, biting deep into Bulkhead's side, as the T-Rex Maw cleaves away metal and leaves a trail of Energon running down the green bot's leg. Staggering back with a grunt of pain, Bulk tries to steady himself and resume the fight, but it is already too late, as pouncing on his foe with a bestial ferocity, Megatron rakes his serrated claws across the Wrecker's face, temporarily blinding him, so that as a point-blank laser strikes his torso, he is sent flying back into what remains of the Iacons and Insecticons. Knowing Bulkhead will be torn to shreds if he doesn't do something, Ratchet hastily dispatches his own opponent before rushing towards the wrecker's position. Doing what they can to buy the Docbot time, B and RC deposit the children of the triage center then race forward as well, with their intention being to pick up where Bulk left off and finish the fight with Megatron. Seeing they have remained in their alt modes, the Decepticon warlord decides to match them, as to him this is little more than a game to pass time until Optimus decides to show his face. As a result, he transforms with the sound of skin stretching over metal, so that soon he is in his T-Rex configuration once more. By now, the two Autobots have closed the distance, with RC attempting to flank the Abomination, while Bulkhead draws his attention by revving up and driving directly towards him. This is a brave plan, but a foolish one. As demonstrating the power of a Predacon, Megatron lurches forward and brings his scaly foot down on the hood of the yellow muscle car, caving it in with enough force to shatter his windshield. Luckily for B, it is at this moment that RC chooses to attack. Having returned to bot mode as she opens fire on the villain's back. However, these are insect bites against his new purple hide, and so turning to face her, he lets out a bellow, before catching her arms in his jaws and hurling her aside. Despite his injuries, B takes this chance to transform back and cover her, laying down suppressing fire as he rushes to his friend. Though, this just bunches them together, making them easy prey for a swipe from Megatron's tail, so that a moment later, both are sprawled out on their back, unable to fight any longer. Seeing two more bots in need of saving, Ratchet next turns his attention to them, all the while shouting for someone to hold the line. A call Magnus is more than prepared to answer, as he steps up, his grip tight on the forge of Soulless Prime. Sneeringly, Megatron questions if Optimus' shadow really thinks he has what it takes to defeat him. Though refusing to engage in banter with a monster, Ultra Magnus simply replies that Megatron will receive no mercy from him. With this, Magnus charges, the forgery swinging upwards in a blistering arc like the one he used to decapitate Dreadwing. However, as the Autobot 2IC will learn, the gap between the servant and his master should not be underestimated, as while the hit does land on the underside of the beast's jaw, even briefly snapping Megatron's head back, it is not the decisive blow he needs. As lowering his red optics to meet Magnus, the warlord growls that he is as pathetic as the rest of his kind. Evidently intent on proving this, Megatron then surges forward, his monstrous jaw clamping down on Magnus's undamaged shoulder plate and shredding it like paper. Letting out a grunt of pain, the Autobot warrior forces himself to remain standing, lashing out with the hilt of the forge to leave open the Abomination's jaw and make his escape. Though this freedom is short-lived, as with his mouth now open, Megatron decides to demonstrate another of his upgrade's powers, as like Grimlock and Predaking before him, he belches a torrent of flame directly onto Ultra Magnus. In spite of his stoicism, the Autobot lieutenant screams as his metal body warps and his blue paint blackens and blisters away. Yes, this is what Megatron wants, as surely the agonized cries of his second-in-command will draw Optimus out from wherever he's hiding. However, here he is mistaken, as when the beaten form of Ultra Magnus finally tumbles out of the flames and onto the ground, there is still no sign of the Autobot leader. Very well, if his followers' screams will not convince him, then perhaps their deaths will provide his old enemy with sufficient motivation. Figuring he may as well start with the Autobot in front of him, Megatron raises his clawed foot and prepares to stomp down on Magnus's defenseless processor, though before he can, the ground beneath him begins to rumble. Looking around for the cause, Autobots and Decepticons alike are shocked to see that part of the plaza is crumbling away, creating a deep chasm from which emerges a fearsome red and gold bot, who resembles both Optimus and Grimlock, but clearly is neither, and as he draws the Star Saber in one hand and Grimlock's burning blade in the other, all are struck by the knowledge that they have witnessed the birth of a legend forged from two sparks, Primelock. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.